Yeah.
And there you go.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. I am super excited to be here with Dr. Vy Simeles, and she is actually new to our team, but she does use doTERRA products in her office. I had the pleasure of serendipitously meeting her on a landmark call in a closing meeting. And who knew that, almost a year later, I think, here we are as very dear friends that love to go walking and talk about health. And she has so much information that I just would love for her to be able to share with everyone, because I find it so important and I have found it invaluable in my life and what she's taught me about myself, my body, and health in general. So today, the topic of choice is food allergies and intolerances. And there seems to be a lot of confusion on this topic, because what is the difference between an allergy and an intolerance? And there are products with doTERRA that we can use, like digestin and Terrazymes, that can help us process the foods. But if we're eating the wrong foods for our bodies, there can be other results that we are not wanting, and then we're using these products in the improper way. So we want to teach you about your body so that when you're using products to support your body, you know that you're doing the right methods for yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Miss V and let her teach you the difference about intolerances and allergies. Hello, beautiful V.
Hi, thank you, Celeste. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm very excited. One of the things that I love as a naturopathic doctor is that we spend a lot of time with our patients, and that allows us the time to educate people on how to take care of themselves. Because for me, it's really about empowering my patients to take care of themselves. And part of that is just understanding what all is going on. So I'm very excited to do this series and to be working with you. All right. So first off, just a little bit about me. As Celeste said, I am a naturopathic doctor, and I'm also a licensed acupuncturist. So I've got a lot of different tools in the belt. And just as a brief description, I mean, I really work with anyone, but if you take a look at my patient population, most of them have some sort of chronic disease. There's issues with their gut health. Autoimmune diseases and chronic pain are the common complaints that come in, and then we kind of discover and unveil what else is there. And it's all related, that is one of the things that happens is people come in with whatever they come in with, but then it's all related. I use many tools to help diagnose and treat conditions, and this includes nutrition and herbs, supplements, essential oils, like Celeste said. This is how we kind of connected to begin with. Of course, acupuncture, energy work, emotional work, and coaching, and more. So to start out with, I want to talk about food and the immune system a little bit. Food intolerances or food allergies have been really a hot topic in the past couple of years, and a lot of people are starting to get on board with the idea that food has an impact on our health. And people have a hard time figuring out what it is. Like, is everybody allergic to gluten? Should nobody eat dairy? What's the deal with all of that? And it is really individual and kind of complex. So we're going to go through it a little bit. So some of the symptoms of a food reaction, I just kind of wanted to go over what you might recognize as, okay, maybe I have an issue with food. And this also starts to speak to why it's so hard to figure out if you have an issue with food or not, because as you can see from this list of symptoms, and this is not a comprehensive list, I just put a couple of things up here. So locally, and by local, I mean in the gut, because that's where what your food is touching, right? It's going in your mouth, it's going down your esophagus, into your stomach, into your intestines. So the local reactions can be things like cramping, bloating, bowel changes, which is a nice way to say constipation or diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, heartburn, really any of the above. It can also be mouth sores, so anything that touches the digestive system, that would be the local reactions. And when we have those reactions, it's a little bit easier to figure out, okay, it probably has to do with food because it's actually affecting that system. However, we can also have these systemic issues. And this is where it becomes very tricky because it can look like a lot of other different conditions: joint pain, headaches, skin reactions, people who have psoriasis, eczema, things like that, hives, obviously, autoimmune conditions. There are people who have autoimmune thyroid issues, and it can be related to your food. And that can be part of why you're having an autoimmune issue. Now, it may be kind of a chicken or the egg issue where, is one causing the other, or it's a little bit cyclical there, but it certainly doesn't help if you have a food reaction and you have a propensity towards autoimmune issues. Brain fog is another big one that I see systemically. And kind of the thing that joins all of that is inflammation. You really can have inflammation locally. You can have inflammation systemically as a symptom of a food reaction. I wanted to take a little sidebar to just talk about inflammation, because that word is thrown around a lot, but I think most people don't even really know what inflammation means. And inflammation is something that the immune system produces as a reaction. It's like your immune cells are coming in contact with something that it doesn't like, and it produces these signal to other immune cells, hey, there's something wrong here, come help me out. And the problem is it can cause issues like redness, pain, swelling, heat, or loss of function of an area. And why does our immune system do this? Well, there's a lot of complex reasons, but some of these things can help resolve a problem. And the issue we have with inflammation is that we're having a harder time clearing the inflammation when we're constantly being exposed to something like a food that we don't like, a food that our body doesn't like. So then the inflammation never clears. We have chronic swelling, chronic pain, a lot of redness or heat in an area, and that becomes an issue. So the immune system is quite complex, as we've found over the last year or so with COVID. We're learning a lot about the immune system. And this is certainly not a comprehensive view of the immune system, but in terms of food responses, these are a couple of the things that I think about. So immune cells produce these signals, lots of different ones, but some of the things that the immune cells produce are called immunoglobulins. And there are different kinds of immunoglobulins. And as we can see here, the different immunoglobulins can produce different responses. When we talk about allergies, it's usually more of an IgE reaction. And that's more of your typical allergy, like if you say, get hives from something, it's usually immediate. You can tell right away that you're allergic to something because as soon as you put it in your mouth or as soon as you come in contact with it, you're going to have a reaction to it. This is what can cause anaphylactic type reactions, the swelling and everything. This is, bee stings and all of that. People have peanut allergies and their throat closes up. That's kind of more of the IgE reaction. And that we can find out through a skin prick test, which is kind of the standard. If you go to a conventional doctor, they're going to give you a skin prick test. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that really only shows IgE reactions. Now, there's all these other ones that usually conventional doctors don't really test for. And one of them is an IgG reaction. Now, that is a little bit more towards the delayed reaction. So this is going to be You might not notice right away that you have a problem with something, but over time you start feeling worse and worse, and you start feeling like, oh, I have all this inflammation and it's not resolving and I don't know why. You might develop that joint pain, headaches, brain fog. Your autoimmune conditions might get worse. And that one is a little hard to figure out without either a complete elimination diet or a sensitivity panel. And we'll talk more about what that means later. And then in terms of food reactions, we also have something called IgA. And IgA is something that's produced in our mucous membranes. That's anywhere that's, like your mouth, your nose, your digestive tract. That is your mucosal membrane. So the reactions are going to be more local to those areas. And it's going to look a little bit like IgE reactions sometimes, but usually less severe. It's not going to be your anaphylactic reactions. It's going to be like a little bit of itchiness, but it never becomes worse than that. Or it's the cramping or maybe some skin issues, but it's not your anaphylactic type reactions. This can be a signal that there's something going on with your immune system, that it's not working properly. It might need a little extra support. And again, it's going to be hard to figure out without a sensitivity panel. IgA4 is something that I actually don't understand that well. It's kind of a new thing on the scene in terms of sensitivity panels. It gets a little bit more specific, and usually it is a sign that there's something going on with your immune system. And when I say something going on, I mean, hey, you have been eating this food for a long time, and over time, your immune system cannot handle it anymore. It's like you have overtaxed your immune system, and now it is reacting to something that maybe when it's healthy, it wouldn't react to. So this is going to be something that shows up on a sensitivity panel. So maybe some of you have done a skin prick test. So this is your typical allergy test where you go in and they label all these different spots, and then they just inject you right under the skin with different allergens. And then they watch to see what spots have a reaction. And if there's a little bit of local reaction, and they say you have an allergy to that. And if there's not a reaction, then you don't have an allergy. The problem with this is it really only looks at IgE reactions. So different immune cells exist in different areas of your body. And the immune cells that exist in your skin are not necessarily the same as the ones that exist in your gut. So they may not have the same reaction. And the ones that exist under your skin are more likely to produce the IgE reaction, and they might not show up with things that affect the gut. So we can see right away, right there, that we are missing some of the immune reactions that are possible, as well as it's just not even the same type of cell. So you might find that your allergist says you don't have an allergy to anything, it's not a problem. And yet every time you eat eggs, you notice that your stomach hurts. And you're wondering, oh, why is that? Or people say, oh, well, I didn't test for celiac, but it does seem like every time I eat gluten, there's something weird going on. So that's where we start to get into, there's a lot of different immune responses, and we can't just use a skin test to figure out if you have an allergy or not to that. Let's see. So this is just an example of a sensitivity panel. The lab that I use is US Biotech. There's a lot of labs out there. I use US Biotech because they will test each person's blood twice, and they will do kind of a blind study for themselves and make sure that both of those samples agree, the results that come up agree. So because there's been such a huge interest in food sensitivity panels. There are a lot of companies out there that now offer it. I would say be careful which labs you go with. Not all of them have the same kind of quality assurance. US Biotech has been around for a long time. I don't work for them. I don't make money from them. So this is not, an advertisement for them. I don't have any conflicts of interest there. However, this is one of the labs that I do trust. And there are a couple that are trustworthy, but, consult a doctor when you're wanting to get this. So you can see on this test that there's a couple in the corner here. Let me see, is there a little, can you see my arrow? Oh, oops. How do I go back? Sorry, let me see here. Let me see if I can go back. There we go. So we can see in the corner that it labels a couple of the different things that I talked about, the IgA, the IgG, and IgG4. And then when you actually look at the panel, you can see that if you only tested one of those things, say IgA, which is the white little spots there, you might miss that this person has a huge reaction to eggs. So if you were only looking at the IgA, it not much shows up on that. But when you look at the IgG or the IgG4, it's pretty high. So you want to kind of look at all of the different immunoglobulins when you're looking at allergy panels. So some of the issues that I find with testing, and some people come in and they say, hey, I've been having a lot of gut issues and I want to get a food allergy test. And some of the issues that I find with testing are, one, improper testing, some of which we've already covered by, ordering the wrong type of test or not testing enough things. The second issue is immune upregulation, which we'll go into a little bit more. And then the third would be immune deficiency. So let's see. So proper testing, getting a comprehensive panel that covers kind of all the foods that you are suspecting might be an issue, making sure you cover all the immunoglobulins is one. But also, if you are getting a food sensitivity panel, you have to actually be eating the foods. Your immune system isn't always producing immunoglobulins to everything that you are allergic to. If you have been avoiding foods for a while because you are a really good health advocate and you've been, researching things online and you're like, gluten's not good for me and eggs are probably an issue, and so I don't eat any of those things, and you've been really good at avoiding foods, it might not show up on your food panel. So that's one of the unfortunate things. If we have eliminated a bunch of foods from our diet that have made us feel bad, and then we want to do a food sensitivity panel, they might not show up if it's been a long time. So even though some of those foods might make you feel bad, if you're going to do a panel, you have to actually, have your immune system be in contact with the foods that you're testing. The other issue is a lot of the times when we have gut issues, it's not just a food intolerance. There may be something else going on with your gut. And if there's something else going on with your gut, then your immune system might be either upregulated or a little bit deficient. And then on the food panel, you might show high reactivity to all of the foods, or you might show no reactivity to any of the foods, and it might not actually be an accurate picture of what's going on. Let me go into that a little bit more here. So one of the things that we find, if you have had chronic issues with the gut, if you've been eating foods that your body doesn't like, if you have an infection going on in there, if there's a lot of inflammation in your gut, then you might have what is colloquially called a leaky gut. And in the scientific community, it's called intestinal permeability, which is like a little nicer of a term. But the problem here really is that the gut cells are supposed to be a barrier to the outside world. It really is where we are interacting with things coming in from the outside. So that gut lining, the cells have to be really tight. And that allows our gut to break down our foods properly into the small little bits that our body can actually then digest and use. When we have a leaky gut because of inflammation, the cells literally become, there's little gaps in the cells. There's little gaps in the barrier. So kind of like this roof right here. Now we're starting to see things leaking into the body that shouldn't be there. This includes bacteria and viruses that shouldn't be there, but it also includes food particles that haven't been properly broken down. Our body, the gut is supposed to break everything down into the most basic ingredients so that the rest of our body can just absorb it and use it right away. But if we have giant chunks of something going into the body, that is going to cause an immune reaction in the body. And that's where our immune system will become really sensitive, and we will start reacting to things that we shouldn't be reacting to because they are showing up in places that the body doesn't expect them to. And the immune system is all about keeping out what is not supposed to be there. The microbiome is another huge issue. So one of the things that the microbiome does is helps us to break down foods. Like actually some of the foods that we eat, we don't digest. It's the bacteria in our gut that help to digest those foods. And sometimes people end up having too much bacteria in their gut, even if it's the healthy types of bacteria. If you have too much of something, they're living organisms. They need food. So they're going to start actually breaking down your intestinal cells if there's too much of them in there because they need to eat. So whatever you're feeding yourself is getting eaten up by these bacteria, and then your body feels like it's starved of nutrients. And then they start breaking down the intestinal cells, which leads to some leaky gut or inflammation, and then leads to these immune problems. On the other side, if you don't have enough bacteria in your gut, then your foods aren't being broken down properly. And then we again lead to some issues with the immune system recognizes these foods as foreign objects that we shouldn't have in our body, and that causes that immune response. So sometimes when we're reacting to a food, it has nothing to do with actually whether that food is good for us, but it's that the immune system is not functioning the way it's supposed to. So it's hyper reacting to something or it's under reacting to other things. Now, over time, if we have just kept feeding our immune system things that it doesn't want, or our immune system is really being taxed in other ways, like we're not giving our bodies the right nutrients, we're constantly getting sick from this or that, then what happens is we deplete our immune system of what it needs to function. So then it stops reacting. Sometimes I get really worried when someone comes in and says, well, I haven't been sick in like 12 years. And I think, well, you should have. Like we're constantly, interacting with things in our environment. And that's a way for our immune system to just do a little tune-up. So if we are not reacting to anything, it could be that your immune system is deficient and it's not mounting a proper response to the things that it should, including foods. So sometimes when nothing shows up on the food sensitivity, but we see that there are issues in the body, I get a little bit suspicious. Like, is it that you don't have any food sensitivities, or is your immune system just not working properly? So I wanted to end with a couple of the essential oils that I really love to use for the immune system. We're going to have more of these presentation. So we can dive into other topics more on other calls, and please feel free to contact Celeste or Amy with some ideas of things you might like to hear about. But I wanted to just keep it simple and not overwhelm you with information. So we're just going to go into a couple of the essential oils that I like to use. Digest Zen is just one of my absolute favorites for the digestive system. These are the ingredients right here. And it's really great for supporting healthy digestion. You can use it topically, or sometimes I like to put a couple of drops in some water and drink it, especially if I am having a little bit of nausea or upset stomach or having some cramps. Just like to get a little bit of hot water, put a couple of drops in there and sip on that. And that is very, very effective. They also come in a lot of different forms, I believe. I've only ever used the oil, but I think they come in capsules and a couple of other forms. Digest tabs is another one that I've used for my patients. And that basically is Digest Zen, but with calcium carbonate. So it's in a little, it's kind of like a Tums, but like a healthy Tums. And so that's really for heartburn. If you're having a lot of heartburn issues, the calcium carbonate will soothe that, but then it also has all of those other lovely oils to just help with the bloating and the indigestion and help to break down foods a little bit better and stimulate your digestive system. One of the ingredients in Digest Zen is peppermint, and I love peppermint, such a versatile oil for everything, really. It helps with upset. And then if you're having skin reactions and you're having itchy skin, I like to use it topically as well. It's very calming for itchy skin. I don't know why. It's also, I love this oil because it's pretty safe. You can use it neat, like just directly on your skin, or you can dilute it in some oil, or you can, put it in some water. It's just a very, very safe oil. It also is great for nausea. So if you're having any of those issues, peppermint, grab some of that. Turmeric, oops, I forgot to change that at the bottom of the PowerPoint there. But turmeric is a really great anti-inflammatory. The nice thing about turmeric is that it is active in the oil form. So this is actually a really great form. Like getting an essential oil of turmeric is really a great way to use turmeric. You want to add it to some fat, so coconut oil or fatty coconut milk, that kind of thing will really help your body to absorb turmeric. It's highly anti-inflammatory, great for the gut. People use it in pretty high doses in cooking. You can use it topically for joints. I basically use turmeric on anyone who has inflammation and can tolerate it. Okay, those are not all the essential oils that I would use for the digestive system, but I thought I would just highlight a couple that specifically I would think about if somebody is having an allergic reaction or an upset stomach from eating a food that they aren't supposed to. So not comprehensive list, but just a couple of highlights. And this is some contact information for me. I am moving clinic soon, but I do not have a new website. So currently my website where you can find me is Terrain Wellness. This is my email address right there. And that's my personal phone number. So that's not my clinic number, but again, I'm moving clinic soon. So that's where you can contact me currently. All right, I'm gonna stop this. Okay, ladies, any questions, comments?
That was awesome. And I really appreciate the just very clear portrayal of food allergies, the system, products that can help. I mean, you really encompass everything and more than I was. That's awesome.
Yeah.
can say just from personal experience that I have talked to several people since I did the food testing with you, and that most of them have done that little scratch test,
Yeah.
and they're having happen exactly what you said, is they're feeling like there's still foods that aren't working with their system, and they're like, but I had the food allergy test. I'm like, did you have your blood drawn? Because she actually drew my blood and sent my blood in. And they always say, no, they did the little scratch thing. And I'm like, I don't know about those. So that really was informative to help me have a visual and comparison to those two types of testing and what that means for people.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I have to explain that all the time to people, and this is a common thing that people come in with. I did the allergy test and it didn't show any of these things, but I feel like I'm still like every time I eat strawberries, I still have a reaction to them. So I'm avoiding them, but I don't know why.
It's interesting too. You said a lot of times we can overeat intolerances that can cause other issues. And when I turned 21, I went to Vegas, and they have buffets everywhere. And I am a fruit
Yes.
eater, and I was eating. They had the best pineapple. I thought I was like in a
Mm.
island. Pineapple solid for like 3 days, and I had 15 canker sores.
Oh gosh.
I was leaving Vegas, and I was like, what the, and of course all my drinks were fruity along the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And like everyone's like, oh, you just overate the citrus. Citrus will do that to you. It's the acids. So I thought about that, and I've been cautious over the years, but I had noticed every once in a while when I had, and it was always based around pineapple, because
Mm.
oranges and lemons and other things, and that wouldn't happen. And then you
Yeah.
did testing, and pineapple was one of my intolerances.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
There it is. Just explain the canker sores when I was 21. It was like,
Yeah.
I knew
Here's the
it.
pineapple bar.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so great to do those tests and be able to pinpoint, like, okay, these are the foods I need to limit. And I wouldn't even say, unless you have a really severe anaphylactic reaction, that you have to get rid of foods forever, but you just become aware of, okay, if I am eating this regularly, it's going to cause a problem for my body. But it's okay for your immune system to every now and then, have a
Well,
little reaction to something. It just like keeps it on its toes.
yeah, and that's one thing I have found, that after you gave me that list, I've done some experimenting. And I mean, gluten was one of my highest ones, dairy,
Yeah.
coffee, and chocolate, which I didn't care about the coffee or chocolate, oddly. But I have found that if I space my allergies and intolerances, I can actually have little treats along the way. But I know, like,
Yes.
I have something gluten today, that I should not have any gluten for the next few days, or any of my
Yes.
intolerances. And I have found that by doing this, my intolerances have actually lessened,
Yeah.
having less of a reaction with the intolerances, as long as I keep everything in control with my diet with the allergies and intolerances.
Yeah, that brings up such a great point. Yeah. Yeah,
My,
it's not
yeah,
about like limiting your life,
yeah,
that we're not trying to make sure you don't eat any foods. Like you're
yes.
going to subside on a diet of broccoli for the rest of your life. It's like, that's not what it's about. We're just giving you some information, and then you can make choices based on that information that are better for your body. And that way you can enjoy a little bit of this and that, but you just know you can't have it all the time.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I love having those foods. It was scary at first, I will admit. And I know that a lot
Yes.
of people that I've talked to avoid it because they're afraid of finding out what they're allergic to, because they don't want to mentally have to deal with that.
Yeah.
And everything in moderation, nothing in an extreme, really
Exactly.
helps support a balanced lifestyle in all areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that about all things, and I think sometimes in this field we can overdo it with the healthy stuff. It's like no
Oh,
sugar ever, and and all of that, and it just makes life so difficult. And food is such a big part of our social interactions with people. It's such a big part of the emotional connection that you have with other people, your family, cultures. So it isn't about making you avoid all meals with people because you can't eat any of the things that they're eating.
well, and that
Just
brings up good point because something that I had actually done when I went on my health journey is I was actually a vegetarian for 15 years,
Oh,
and one of my proteins was nuts, and I
mhm.
carried bags of nuts with me, and I started eating them when I first woke up and all the way through the day until I fell
Yeah.
asleep. I actually stressed out my gallbladder by
Yeah.
over good fats.
Yeah.
3 p.m. is what a Asian acupuncturist doctor told me in Texas. And so when I stopped doing that, it really shifted my digestion. And it also makes me think of, not being extreme on any one item just because they say, like Popeye, eat your spinach every day. Don't be extreme. I think about a friend whose father-in-law went on one of these carrot juice deals,
Oh,
and he
yeah.
turned himself orange. Like he looked
Oh,
like
yep. Yeah. I had a
a
friend do that with sweet potato.
So like, I think you overdid the carrots. So again, everything in moderation, and listening to your body and what's right. And I should have thought about that because I know not to be extreme. And the nuts, I was just thinking I need my protein,
Yeah.
and that's what my thought was. So it was an eye opener for me.
Yeah, it's so normal because I think all humans like for life to be simple. We really do want to be like, just kind of give me the basics of what I have to do. If I can just do that and not think about it too much, because I already have a ton of stuff on my plate. I don't want to have to think about one other thing and be really intentional about everything that's going on in my life. So sometimes we get our brains stuck on something. Kale is good for me. I'm going to eat kale with every single meal, and then we overdo it. And really, with food, especially, it is about variety, which
Yep,
can be hard to do.
definitely, especially when you're traveling. Like a person for
Yes.
myself who travels a lot, and a lot of people like to, create meals for me, and they try to keep it within what they know I normally eat. But
Yeah.
that shifts so quickly with me, and so
Yeah.
I'll come one day and they're like, "Oh, I made you this great meal." I'm like, "Oh, I'm not eating that right now." Have to do that anymore. I can say,
Yeah.
yes, I am so grateful. I'm going to eat this meal. And then in my head, I can say, and now I should not eat these few things for the next few days.
Yeah. Yeah. Just be aware of that. Absolutely. And that also um, brings up a point that for me, I also don't want people to feel fearful around food. And I do think that affects the way that your body responds to what you're taking in. If you have a thought like, this is bad for me, but I'm going, like I'm going to do it, but I know that this is bad for me. I think that does tell your body to be stressed out and react to the things that you're taking in.
Well, something when I know that you understand is how the emotions connect to the system. And
Yeah,
when we put ourselves into a space of fear, that produces certain chemicals in the body. And so
exactly.
chemicals can actually be the things that are also creating a reaction to those foods. And so
Yeah,
we certainly want to understand that food is our friend, food is
yeah,
healthy, food is necessity for this body that we have right now.
yeah, yeah,
And it's just learning your body and how to utilize those foods the proper way for each body.
exactly. That's exactly right.
Well, thank you so much, Miss V.
You're
We can
welcome.
wrap up unless there's any other thoughts that you have. And I don't think it looks like Amy doesn't have any questions that I see.
Okay, perfect. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.